let's talk about kind of a pretty, I'd say, major piece of news that happened throughout the last week. On Wednesday, November 15th, 2017, Pacific Lutheran University announced the resignation of head football coach Scott Westering. Scott Westering, a member of the PLU Hall of Fame, he's been involved in Lute athletics as a student athlete as well as a coach. Westering began his tenure on the coaching staff in 1981 and has been a coach for the last 14 seasons, compiling a record of 73 and 54. So a very successful run.
There you go.
For Scott Westering as PLU football's head coach. It kind of leads you to believe, well, what's the deal? Why would he walk away? Tension, I would call it, between the athletic department and Scott Westering kind of started last year. The athletic department tweeted out a photo of a football player practice. Now on a PLU football player's practice jersey, the word EMAL is written. EMAL stands for Every Man a Lute. Kind of a symbol of togetherness. Really wants to kind of build a team and
lifestyle.
That starts at practice, right? The department tweeted out a photo of that player in his practice jersey with what I still consider one of the worst efforts as far as Photoshop is concerned, because they just kind of smeared out the word EMAL. They didn't make an effort to get rid of it. They I don't want to say they made it noticeable that it was gone, but it was very, very apparent that word was missing from that photo. And the move was made to work on the branding of PLU athletics. The department felt that the word EMAL, the term EMAL, was too inclusive. Only people who have been a part of the football program in the last 47 years, going back to when Scott Westering's father, Frosty Westering, was the head football coach, the last 47 years could kind of understand and grasp what EMAL means. And you can kind of see both sides of it as, let's get back here. When you're trying to grow a brand, having something that prohibits the understanding from the general public is a tough obstacle to overcome. Having someone that might not be a part of PLU see EMAL and kind of go, what is that? I don't understand, and that's tough. So that's kind of where the tension began. And
they even had an open forum on it last year after all this came about. Right.
When people connected to the university learned of the tweet, it caused a little bit, and a little bit's an understatement, of an uproar between alumni and people around the university trying to figure out what it all was. I think the knee-jerk reaction was that it was an attack on EMAL and what it stood for, the character building, the togetherness. And I want to reiterate that that's not really what it was. That's not even close to what it was. I think it's ridiculous to assume that a leader would not want someone who is crafting young men to not preach the things that the Westering family has taught. I think that it was more, like I said, a branding move, trying to make everyone be able to understand what PLU and what PLU athletics is. Scott Westering kept his job after all of that. I mean, it was a lot around here. There was a lot of drama.
Got very close to Scott. We thought as a football team, us players, that he was super close. He even made the comment, if EMAL goes, I go.
Right.
So we knew that tension, was there, and there was a good chance that I might have a different coach my senior year.
So we fast forward to last Wednesday, and Scott Westering and PLU have decided to part ways. So let's talk about it. DJ, you mentioned that last year with that drama, that tension surrounding the term EMAL, almost drove Scott to leave right then and there. He stuck it out for another year, and now he's decided, I can do better things somewhere else.
Yeah, I think coming from a player's perspective, I think that he was definitely fired because of what he stood for and what he tried to establish, or his family tried to establish his program on for the last 47 years he was here. We talk about the word EMAL, but it's really more than just that. You don't have to coin the phrase EMAL. It can be whatever you want to call it. It's a lifestyle, and it's something that is used as a vehicle to shape young boys into young men, and it has accomplished that goal very successfully here at PLU. Granted, Scott hasn't had the most success here in his tenure, but he sure has had the impact on young men that every coach in America would dream to have, because really that's what coaching is all about. Coaching is what you do to a player. You help him get to a place that he can't get to on his own. And that's not only on the football field, that's as a person. And Scott definitely did that. And I feel like this was very much so personal in the fact that Scott resigned, because Lori and him never saw eye to eye, and that's just a bummer.
Lori Turner, the athletic director here at Pacific Lutheran University. I think that between the three of us, we might be the best group suited to talk about this incident. Mm-hmm. It's not being, braggadocious or in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. DJ, you were a football player for the last 4 years,
So obviously, I'm going to have a different perspective.
I work in athletics. Yep. I understand what all the talk is surrounding the event. And then Seth is relatively new to PLU. You're just in your second year.
Yep.
You don't work for athletics. You love sports, but you might just be an outsider looking in. Can you give me your thoughts, I guess, on hearing that Scott Westering has resigned and is no longer the football coach at PLU?
Well, I mean, obviously it is very big news, but to DJ's point, I was actually unfamiliar with the term email up until this news came out in the last week. I'd seen it on, I think, your Twitter feed or maybe on a Facebook post or whatever it was, and I didn't know exactly what the term meant until somebody else commented and asked you what it was. So from a branding perspective, I do understand why they may want to Photoshop that out. It's difficult to say without much insider knowledge from my perspective.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot. It's a lot to try and think about, because the term, the idea, the philosophy behind email was created long before any of us were even close to being here. Way back, when Scott's father, Frosty Westering, instituted that amongst his program. And Frosty is one of the most successful coaches to ever coach college football.
The ninth winningest coach in all of college football.
All of it.
Yep.
Every single level. It's tough to talk about, because I understand both sides. I understand why Scott is so firm in his beliefs, and I also understand why the athletic department wants to create like Seth just said, why they want to create an easier, recognition or identifier with PLU athletics. Mm-hmm. It's all tough. It's a tough deal. Long term, I think that both sides will be better from it. I think that Scott will go find another coaching job somewhere, and he will be a better coach because of it. Mm-hmm. He'll be better from getting away from here. Mm-hmm. I truly believe that. I think that PLU will be PLU will be better in a sense that they are going to have someone who is going to want to kind of cooperate with what the university wants.
I see what you're saying there, but as a coach, like, if you're looking at this right now, why would you want to come coach here? If you look at just from a facilities point of view, because that is really what a lot of kids look at when they're, getting recruited. They're all about, the flash, especially in today's culture. Maybe not so much back then.
Why'd you come here then? Why'd you come here to play football?
Because, one, there was great academics, obviously. That's
okay.
Keep going. That's not the only reason.
That's you. Okay,
that's not the only reason.
Keep going.
You know me. I'm a big football guy. The football program was pretty successful. They had been to the national playoffs the last 2 years, and then just the whole concept of the tradition and the richness of that tradition here at PLU. That's what kind of drew me in. But going back to the stuff, number one, we don't have a stadium on campus. Every team in the Northwest Conference does. Our locker room has not been remodeled since, I believe, the 1970s. Everybody else in the Northwest Conference has nice facilities. And just this, there's nothing to recruit here. Scott did so much with very little, in my opinion, because I've been to all of these different schools. I've seen what they have. all of their stuff is like leaps and bounds above us.
You can't. Okay, I'm gonna bust you up a little bit.
That's fine.
I'm gonna bust you up a little bit because you can't. I don't think you can get away with saying you came here for the tradition, but also complain that stuff isn't new enough. Because tradition lasts a long, long time, right?
Yeah.
And if those lockers aren't, are the same that the players in the 70s used, that's the same part of the tradition. I mean, it's kind of, it's a double-edged sword when saying, I came here for the tradition, but our stuff's not new. I think you came here for a bigger reason.
I guess when I say tradition, in my sense, in this context, surrounds that word or the term emo and what it has done for so many guys. So many football players have gone here and went on to become successful business members, successful husbands, successful fathers, things like that. So I guess when I'm talking about tradition, that's more so the sense. That's more though the sense I'm taking. I can totally see where you're coming from with the tradition, as in stuff.
All of it.
Yeah. So I guess that's just kind of more of the point I'm taking in this context.
Well, I think where we're at with coaching as a whole, going back to, you talk about the tradition of what Frosty Westering and the Westering family has stood for throughout their time. Mm-hmm. Frosty Westering, to a lot of people, was one of the first coaches to really, really, really focus on the character building that comes along with coaching.
And it's so unique. Like, you don't see that. You do see that at other schools, but it's not to the point of uniqueness that this place does.
Are you sure?
Like, there's not. We focus on it so much that we're willing to take 3 practices out of our fall camp in order to go to breakaway and do something that is not bring a football at all, take everybody's phones, and just focus solely on team building exercises for 2.5 days. We're doing stuff on the beach. We are doing inner circles we split up into teams. We're talking to the young guys and explaining to them this concept of what it means, to be a loot football player here at PLU, and just the relationships that you get from that. Those last even a lifetime, just based on those 2.5 days. There are not many teams in the country that take those 3 practices away from fall camp just to do that.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm going to disagree, because I think the point I was trying to make was that Frosty may have started it, but people have seen the success that he had, and now more people than you realize are doing the same thing. Mm. And I think that we're at a point where the same type of values will be used by the next person that comes, if that makes sense. It won't be taught the same way, but the values and the character building and all of that goes with what the Westering family has done, a lot, if not all coaches are now more aware of that than they ever have been before. So I think that where we got was people realized that if the Westering family is to depart, the next person that comes will already be aware of what they have done and do something similar. Not exactly, not the same. I'm never going to say that someone's going to do this.
Yeah.
But the next person is going to be as aware as they were, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it will be. It probably will be the same to a sense. But Scott was raised and played in that system, so he knows it better than anybody. And so in that sense, I don't think the new coach, yes, will try to do that, but he won't do that to the effectiveness that the Westering family was able to. I think all of this is going to come from the players who stay there, who stay here, because the legacy will live on in them, and they will instill that in the younger players that come in, because the players that have played here, they know the system, they know what is expected.
It's definitely a tough deal. It's huge news. Scott Westering again resigns as PLU head football coach, and the search is on to find the next person that will be the football coach here at Pacific Lutheran University. So it's strange. It's new, and it's time, I guess, for everyone to move forward and move on with with what's next in their lives.